Welcome to TalentWise, a podcast dedicated to identifying and unpacking challenges and solutions related to the workforce. Each week, we will hear from experts in their fields or industries who are fighting to better understand shifting dynamics. What are those dynamics, you might ask? Put most simply, the workforce crisis we've seen coming for decades is upon us, and most of us aren't nearly as prepared as we should be. Over the past several episodes, we've hosted expert demographers and researchers who have helped us understand the scale and scope of the workforce conundrum. In short, it's complicated. We've also heard from industry leaders tasked with managing strategic efforts to address this problem proactively. And we've heard from human resources professionals who are responsible for talent attraction and retention for their employers. Everyone, every business, and every industry is affected by our shifting workforce. This week, I am particularly excited to welcome Janet May to TalentWise. Janet, thank you for being here. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate your taking the time. For those listening, Janet is the Chief Human Resources Officer and Associate Vice President at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, though the opinions she expresses today are entirely her own. Janet, you've been in this role for nearly 5 years. Anything sort of unusual or out of the ordinary happened over those 5 years?
Well, COVID, and it's actually closer to 4, but it feels like 5 some days.
That sounds about right.
It's been a roller coaster.
Well, before you arrived at UAB, Janet was the Chief Human Resources Officer at Houston Community College, and before that, she was in similar roles at colleges and universities in Houston, Tucson, Texas, and New Mexico. So clearly, Janet, you have seen a lot. Just really appreciate your sharing some of your experience with us here today.
Absolutely.
So I think everyone, upon hearing your introduction, would be curious to know, how did you get to Birmingham and what made you want to be a Blazer?
Well, these type of positions don't come up that often in a place like UAB. And when I say that is that UAB is a really special place. One thing that really attracted me is the culture of UAB. And when you talk about that culture, a lot of places you hear them talk about it, but they don't walk the walk of the talk. And here it's both. So it was really the collaborative environment, the forward thinking that we do here, how we change lives, how we affect all that. It's a community and it's a really special place to be. So the opportunity came up, had some recruiters give me a call and said, sure, on that end, I've done, as you alluded to, I've been in several different areas of higher ed. So I've done land grant institutions, doctoral research with the Health Science Center, 2 large community college systems, and then being able to come into an academic medical center, it works well.
Well, I am so glad those recruiters reached out to you because we are better off in this community with you in it. So, given your experience and sort of the different roles that you've played in, how would you describe the talent attraction environment today, and recognizing you're in a sort of a matrix university system today and some of your past experiences, what's happening out there?
I think it's interesting, and I think it really does depend upon your industry. A lot of people now have side hustles, and we saw that coming out of COVID, and they want more flexibility in their scheduling. And to be quite frank, it doesn't work for all employers. And then you also want to see some candidates that only want to do work through a contracting lens. So you've got to really look at everything coming into looking at what you need as your environment. I think another interesting piece is that we're seeing more people want to understand what their career path or ladder is going to be very quickly. And they want to know it before they even take the job, and then how long it's going to take them to progress through that, through those steps. And it's really hard for employers because many times that next step involves someone leaving a position, and you're doing this whole thing with not only attracting, but also retaining your employees. So I think it's been a very interesting talent attraction environment of one that we've not seen before.
Well, it's certainly a dynamic environment, and you already referenced talent retention. What kind of forces do you see at play on sort of that side of the house?
Very similar when it comes to retention when we talk about the career growth. This is something where you have to think a little creatively with the career growth that you can look at into retaining your employees. So, for example, if you have someone who is in what we consider an individual contributor role, they're just starting out, but they want to move into being an emerging leader. You got to look at how you can help them get there or feel that they are gaining the skills to get there. So things such as adding them to a project team, or even have them put together a proposal or presentation on how you improve or streamline a process. You got to be clear, though, when you do this, how it's going to help them gain that experience, but also how it's going to help them grow in their career. I think culture is also a huge thing. I think every day we've heard that for years, but I think it's even more true now. Culture is a huge part of retention. If you have the best career plans out there, but your culture is not good, you're not going to have retention. So you really have to focus on that positive culture.
That's really helpful and makes me realize or sort of reinforces the fact that we're just at a point in time and there are characteristics at work today that maybe weren't a few years ago. Given where we are today, do you feel like workforce challenges on the talent attraction side and or the retention side, are they getting sort of more severe or less severe?
I don't look at it in terms of severity. I look at the rapid rate of change. So we are in an environment that is now just rapidly changing. We've always had change, especially in human resources. We're used to change. We work with that on a daily basis, but it's never been at this rapid rate. You can also look at it from a society. We've become used to getting our news and our information very instantaneously. So that's a lot of what our workforce is now wanting. The marketplace itself, it's evolving super quick. And I know that's a word, super quick. And jobs are changing just as fast. So if you think about AI, and how that has come into play. It's just been a few short years, and now we're talking more and more about how AI can be used in the workplace. And I say AI, artificial intelligence, from a standpoint of how it enhances or helps us as we look through, not replacing an individual. But that has been an ever-evolving and changing environment. Financial stability has become more key, especially for Generation Z. They're more anxious about that financial stability than some of our other generations. And you have to think about that. They were born in the middle of the Great Recession between 2007 and 2009 when the housing bubble collapsed. And that is very, very important. They saw what their parents went through. They lived through it. So they take a approach with financial wellness as being part of their total wellness package. So they're looking at that. The factors of the rising cost of living is a large driver to their stress. They think about things such as, am I going to be able to buy a home? What does it take? I'm living paycheck to paycheck. And it just brings this new level and layer to the workforce that we really haven't seen in the past.
What are the things, just given all of those various moving pieces that you've just described, what makes doing this work in a university setting kind of unique or perhaps even more challenging?
Colleges and universities have always struggled from a resource standpoint. We're a very different industry. We have different budgeting cycles and we have different revenue resources and revenue streams. Those streams can be from ad valorem taxes, they can be from the state, they are tuition, they can be grants and contracts that come in. So it's a very different environment. And we differ from private industry. And so do our competitors. So our competitors and markets tend to be more from the standpoint of colleges and universities. We do go, though, into private industry. And when we do that, we have to sell ourselves in a little different way. We have to focus on things such as our benefit packages, tuition assistance, our leaves, because a lot of times we can't compete dollar for dollar on the compensation. I was at a conference like several years ago with a couple of other HR leaders from some major industries, and we were in a room they were talking about all these comp packages they do and these sign-on bonuses and all these things. And I told them, hey, I may not be able to compete with you guys salary wise, but let me tell you about what makes us special and our benefits. And by the end, one of them said, I'm just going to come work for you guys. So it's a really different way. We've always had to be very unique in how we market ourselves, but we also now see it even more with the challenges that are out there.
I would imagine for UAV in particular, just as it's the largest employer in the state of Alabama, and you have to recruit for so many different roles, that's got to be just a lot of various moving pieces to manage.
It is. There's a lot, and there's a lot of processes that, we have to have like any large employer. So you need to have your processes down, but you also have to be able to pivot as needed. So we have a wide variety of careers that are out there, from teaching to our staff positions. We have our own police department. You see all these things coming through. So there's a variety, and we have to be able to pivot based on what's happening at that time. So if you've got what we consider a hot job, one that is hard to fill, we have to think about that a little bit differently and how we're going to recruit for that position and bring them in. And I know our counterparts do also in the healthcare environment. But what I will say is that UAB has a great culture, and the work we do has a positive impact on the state. And that goes a long way. People recognize the name University of Alabama at Birmingham. So that does also help us as we're looking to attract talent.
Well, you've sort of opened this door. It's a nice segue. So you're doing this work for so many different positions and departments and areas within UAB's structure. How has your team specifically been impacted? Do you feel like the HR profession is subject to some of the same challenges that we're dealing with more broadly in the economy?
I would say so, and I want to answer it from a really broad perspective because I look at the HR as a whole, human resources as a whole in our profession. It is not immune to the challenges that are out there for others. We have the same thing. We have the same challenges of retaining talent. And one thing with us is many times we're working to fill and retain positions for our institutions and also continue to be a trusted partner. So many times we'll put our needs at the back burner and make sure we're focusing on those. So we're not immune to what's out there. There are a lot of stressors that come into play. Burnout can be high in the human resources industry. I know some people, they shake their head sometimes because they don't understand, but there's a plethora of things that we work through that, we're that trusted person behind the scenes that's doing everything.
What advice might you have based on sort of that experience, that sort of working knowledge? What advice do you have for employers sort of in the education environment today who are tasked with doing some of the same things that you and your team are?
I think for any industry, there's really no longer a norm. There used to be a time where you would see change, things would kind of settle out, and then you would see change again. We're not doing that. The environment is just changing so rapidly. And I would tell everybody, you just got to take a deep breath. You got to jump into the situation. You got to adjust. Your culture is definitely key. If your culture values your team and puts your people first, then that's key during these times. That's going to be a culture that's going to continue to thrive. If you listen to your teams and you make sure they know they listen to you, then the communication piece is taken care of. So part of culture is also the communication and making sure that that is happening. And there is a collaborative effort in communication.
Which can be very difficult in a very large organization sometimes.
It can be.
Yeah. Well, so imagine you and I are meeting and I'm a much younger version of myself and I say, hey, Janet, I'm really interested in pursuing a career like yours. I think what you do is pretty fascinating. What advice do you have?
I would say, first of all, human resources to me is one of the most challenging professions, but also the most rewarding. There's a lot that we do. I love what I do. Even on those most challenging days, which I call my opportunity days, there's always an opportunity out there. The profession, as I said before, it's hectic. And most of the time, our work is behind the scenes. This isn't something where you're going to be out in the middle of the limelight. Most people in HR would prefer not to be in the limelight because typically if we're in the limelight, that means something else is going on. That's not in a positive for this frame. And so we want to make sure we stay behind the scenes. It's an important part of the foundation of any organization. And we have a plethora of areas to cover. So you want to make sure you get immersed in each one of them, from talent acquisition, benefits, compensation, recognition, well-being, relations, learning and development, employment compliance, analytics, and I could go on that end. So I would say that don't just think human resources is one thing. It's a multifaceted career, and it is one that, while it's challenging, it is one of the most rewarding out there.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you just said. And, we've done enough work with large employers in this space. It's very normal to see talent attraction professionals on HR teams, maybe multiple people within a team. We believe we're going to see the emergence of talent retention professionals in teams. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's a thing? And if so, what do you see as a timeline or horizon for something like that?
I think retention is going to continue to be key, and I think it's something we've focused on for a long time, and we've pulled that in from the different facets. So retention specialists, some organizations already use those, and then other organizations, you just look at it from the totality. I do think the future is going to be focusing more on retention. From the time of the different generations, you've seen a difference in how long a person stays in their position or stays with their organization. Education, higher education is one where typically people stay for a long time. That's great on that end, but we have to make sure we're continuing to retain. So I do think that retention is going to continue to play a key factor.
Well, so how can people learn more about some of the work that you and your team do at UAB broadly? And then if I'm interested in a job at UAB, where might I go?
Absolutely. So we would encourage you to follow both UAB and UAB HR on social media, to include LinkedIn and Facebook, and also visit our website at www.uab.edu. The other part is I would tell everybody, if you see someone out and they're wearing a UAB shirt, ask them how we transform lives every day. How does UAB affect that? You'll find out quickly that we're just a very special place to be. In regards to positions we have open, we have a career page that is available. We also do outreach. You can go ahead into our career page. You can set up interest of careers that you're looking for. We may not have it available today, but we could tomorrow, and you'll end up getting a notification that career has come open for you.
That's cool. Well, thank you for that. So we've covered a lot of territory today. What are the key takeaways? If someone is just tuning in at this very last couple of minutes that we have together, what's the takeaway you hope someone remembers from this conversation?
I think the biggest thing, change is not slowing down. It's only getting faster. You need to expect the unexpected. I know you hear that many times, but I think so now even more so. I think we're seeing that more and more. You need to also understand the challenges you're going to face. There are going to be challenges out there, and if you can pull from those challenges, you'll have a better look at what the future is going to look like. And culture is vital. Make sure your culture, take care of your culture, listen to the people who make your organization special, and listen to everyone, and make sure you have that very collaborative environment. If you put your people first, if you listen to your teams and you keep those lines of communication open and navigate through today's environment, you'll be doing well.
I just wish it was as easy to do as, I guess, on some levels it is to say.
I know. I mean, it just sounds like, oh, that's really easy. We understand it's not.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Janet. It was great to see you again, and I'm looking forward to hopefully having you back on TalentWise in the future. Hope everyone listening at home, or if you're driving on your commute, hope you'll join us next time when we speak with Ryan Faught, who's the Senior Vice President of People at Milo's Tea. I guess we're going to try to get him to spill the tea on talent. We'll see how that goes. But Janet, thank you so much. We really appreciate your taking the time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.